Hello, welcome to Canada Files. My name is Valerie Pringle and I'm happy to be your new host, taking over from Jim Deeks. Our first guest this season is author Louise Penny. She has written 18 New York Times best-selling murder mysteries, including her latest, A World of Curiosities. Her main character, Inspector Armand Gamache, beat out Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot in a recent Washington Post survey of beloved detectives. Her books have also been made into a TV miniseries, and she has written a best-selling political thriller with Hillary Rodham Clinton called State of Terror. Remarkable accomplishments for a woman who'd almost given up on her life in her 30s. Louise Penny, hello.
Valerie, hi. Oh, it's been years, hasn't it?
I know. Lovely to see you.
We have not changed.
No, we haven't changed a bit.
A bit.
You know,
we're still delusional.
I was reading the intro you wrote, maybe later to another version of Still Life, your very first book. And you're saying, when I was 35, I thought the best was behind me. I was lonely, tired, and empty, plodding through life. And I'm thinking, you know, you're 64 now with 18 some bestsellers, a life full of joy. You know, how did you turn that around? What happened?
You know what happened? I got sober.
You were alcoholic?
I was, and I'm still. I mean, I'm not an active alcoholic. But I will always have that in me. So I'm in recovery, as they say. So that's what happened. It's such a thief. I mean, it stole all my will to live. It stole my connection to other human beings. It stole much of my humanity. It hollowed me out. And what finally brought me to my knees, I mean, was the alcohol, certainly, but it was loneliness. It was the aching emptiness that I felt, this chasm inside me. And I was 35. I wasn't even halfway through life.
But you said you were always nervous, anxious, timid. Was alcohol your, which it often is, treatment for that? Did it mask another mental illness, or?
I'm not sure it did, because once I got sober, there was no depression. It wasn't. I honestly don't know. I don't know whether I was just predisposed to it. I think it was in the family. I think my father was probably an alcoholic. And I remember looking in the mirror, and when I was 21, 22, about the time I started drinking heavily, and remembering my father, who had passed away by then of pancreatic cancer, but I don't think the drinking helped. And I said, looking myself in the mirror in Toronto, I had just started at the CBC, and saying, I am never going to turn into my father. I am never going to. And of course, I was well on my way to actually having it happen. The interesting thing is that in the program that I subsequently joined that saved my life, there's a phrase, I'm sure you've heard, the grateful alcoholic. And I'm grateful for all that pain and that loneliness, because it made me so much more compassionate and understanding of other people, and the thing that had separated me from others ended up bonding me to other people.
Well, and you talk about you can't understand or appreciate the light until you've lived in the darkness.
Right, and there's the line from Auden that informs all the books, and the starting point was, goodness existed, that was the new knowledge, his terror had to blow itself quite out to let him see it. And I had lived in terror for many, many years, just afraid of everything, and finally afraid that people would find out that I was an alcoholic. I'm just afraid of life, afraid of everything.
There are a couple of interesting things. I mean, at the time you were working as a journalist, radio host, ostensibly really successful and
fully functioning.
Yeah.
Yes, and I've
so
discovered
appearances and reality.
Yeah. Which also, again, sort of informs the books, that duality, and that the more shiny the veneer was, the darker the interior was, the sicker the interior was, and the need then to construct an even more happy and joyous exterior, which, you know, they talk about the least happy people in the world are probably those with the biggest gap between the appearance and the reality.
And then you met your husband.
Yes.
Michael.
Yeah. And I went in within 9 months I went from wanting and thinking I was going to kill myself. And it wouldn't be a cry for help, it would be, and this is one of the many reasons I am in favor of gun control and a big advocate of it, is knowing that if there had been a gun in the house, I would have done it. I know I would have done it. I have no doubt at all, because I had no reason or desire to live. But yeah, I went from wanting to kill myself and not seeing a future to wanting to live, which is an incredible thing, and that happened that night that I described, to finding the love of my life in 9 months. In 9 months. It just breaks my heart when people actually do it, because I just want to put my arms around them and say, you know,
Wait.
It can get better. Not always. I understand that some things are clinical and it's just, you know, that's the road that is irreversible. But there is help out there if you can ask for it and be open to it. There's Michael used to talk about the gift of despair. And the only reason I bounced back was because it was the last house on the road. I was in such despair, I had nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. The marriage was wonderful, but
Yeah.
he ended up with Alzheimer's. The essay you
Yeah.
wrote about living with him and Alzheimer's was one of the saddest things I've read. I mean, it was so poignant, empathetic.
Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm. But he was the one who basically allowed you to become a writer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think he got tired of hearing me talk about wanting to be a writer and not doing it. You know, you were a journalist for many years. You know what it's like. Eventually, you can get ground down by it. Then Michael said, "Look, if you want to quit in order to write that book," and what he said was so almost as great as when he said the first time he said, "I love you." He said, "I'll support you," and he meant it, and he did, financially and in every other way.
And still life came from that.
Still life came from that. It was a bit of a road. I suffered writer's block for 5 years. No fun.
But that being said, you wrote it.
Yes.
Now, how did you get Still Life so right? The right characters,
I love
the
you.
right place? No, but right enough that you could do 17 more?
I know. Who would have thought? They're going to start paying me to stop writing.
But really, you must ask yourself, out of 5 years of writer's block, how you created this world, this character Gamache, who is apparently more popular than Poirot or Sherlock.
Every decision I made was selfish. Every decision. Three Pines, the village, actually came out of 9/11, because it became clear to all of us worldwide that there is no safe place. And the world suddenly became very, very scary. And I yearned for a place that was safe. But there's no guaranteeing physical safety. We all knew that from 9/11. If we didn't know it beforehand, that was a great lesson. But we can guarantee emotional safety, and we do it by connection, by community, by a sense of belonging, friendship. And if the pandemic taught us anything, it was that, again, all over again. So I created Three Pines because I was afraid. And I wanted a place that was going to be emotionally safe. And then I filled it with friends, and certainly people I would choose as friends. And then I created the main character, Armand, as someone I would marry, someone I wouldn't tire of, someone whose company I would enjoy. Because also, Valerie, I didn't think the book would be published. I wanted it to be, obviously. And I love reading series fiction, so I wanted it to be a series. But this was ideal. I never dreamed it would actually happen. But I did set it up so that it could have a life of its own. And so I didn't want to tire of the main character. And if I created someone who was, you know, an alcoholic or a cokehead or, you know, in a bad marriage or desperately unhappy, why in the world would I do that? Why would I choose? Now I'm God, right? I get to be the goddess. I get to create men. Why would I create someone who I don't want to hang around with?
So you created him in your husband's image.
Well, yeah, that was the problem. I realized I didn't actually create him. I transcribed the man.
Now, it was interesting hearing about what a hard time you had after the success of your first one, Still Life. Writing book number 2, you had to go into therapy.
Oh, I'm loving this conversation.
Another form of therapy.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I can see people watching this at home going, boy, she's really screwed up.
No, but...
You know, the good thing is, the more screwed up I am, the better writer I am. So this bodes well for the future, too.
But you had to kind of let go of the expectation and pressure to create the second book.
No, exactly. Because I had, as I said, suffered from writer's block for 5 years. And then, well, because my agent called up, right, and with Still Life, which was already written, and she said, Louise, I've sold 3 books. And I said, Teresa, that's fabulous. Mine and who else's? She said, no, you idiot. They're all yours. Now, it had taken me 45 years to write Still Life, and I'm expected to write the second in a year. And I thought Still Life was magic. I had no idea how I did it. I felt it was like the hand of God. And now I am being handed my dream. And I didn't know how to recreate it. And so what I did was I fell back on what I always fell back on, and that was playing it safe. So just you know, you've got the characters, you've got the template, just do it again, just do it again. And I would say 80, 90% through the second book, not enjoying it. And I knew it was okay, but it wasn't what it could be. And so I went to a therapist for help. And she said something that changed my life. She said, the wrong person is writing the book, which was not helpful. What is that supposed to be
writing this book?
Exactly, my agent. I went for my agent to write it. But she said, no, your critic is writing the book. This actually changed my life in terms of not just writing, but in general. She said, you need to thank the critic and bless the critic, but show the critic the door. You know, leave it ajar because you're going to need her later, and write with just joy, with bravery. Just write. If you write 10 pages on a pair of boots, it's not going to end up in the final draft. Just right. You don't have to get it right the first time. For some reason, I thought I did. I don't know where that came from, but it was paralyzing. And as a result, you know, I ended up being mediocre because that was safe. And she gave me permission to take risks.
And write the next 18 books.
And write the next, and do it with joy,
yeah.
with awareness of how lucky, with gratitude, with how lucky. Bombs aren't dropping on me. No one has a gun to my head. I have food in the fridge. I live with a man I love. Why not just take le beau risque? Just do it. Just do it. And then with this, which is why my first drafts are so awful. I mean, they're really unrecognizable as books. Then the critic comes in, and that's where you do the second draft, the third draft, the fourth draft. You winnow down, you clarify, you simplify. You get the themes, because the books aren't about murder. They're proudly crime novels, but they're not about the murder. They have to be about something else. The crime is the Trojan horse. It allows me to look at all these other issues of redemption, of forgiveness, of belonging, of betrayal, of ruin, of fear, of jealousy. But that has to come out in the third and fourth, but it has to be there in the first draft.
And then your best friend Hillary Clinton phoned.
Hello, Louise.
She's a fan. So it was, hi, Louise.
No. It was, hi, Mrs. Penny. No, it wasn't. Yeah. Who knew? I mean, this has been extraordinary, Valerie, as you can probably gather. I mean, yeah, to go from wanting to kill myself to having Secretary Clinton as a friend and others as friends. I mean, that what you described at the beginning was true, and that was the introduction to my first. I mean, I had no friends. I had no life. I had this great howl of loneliness, and now my life is filled with people I love. And it's so much more, and I learned this with Michael's illness, that it is so much more important to love than to be loved. And, you know, at the end, he didn't recognize me, he didn't love me, but I loved him, and that's what mattered. And now, yes, I have I have, Hillary Clinton in my life and others, and we wrote the book together.
And that was fun? I mean, you mostly wrote it, right? That whatever.
Well, yeah,
but you'd said to her, well, let's get a plot. What's your worst nightmare? What keeps you awake at night?
Right, and she told me. And that became my worst nightmare. Terrible woman. Yes.
I will say, the description of the Trump character. Most successful politicians have charisma. This went way beyond that. He possessed a powerful magnetism and animal instinct. He had a genius for finding people's weaknesses. He was dreadful and dangerous.
Yeah.
That sounds like her talking, right? He's stalking her in the debate.
Yeah. No, and the name was her suggestion, Eric Dunn, Eric the Dumb. What was the phrase? Because I hadn't heard it before, and she said, no, he was called the useful idiot, is what people, even his allies would call him the useful idiot, because he would do what they wanted, which was why they supported him. But yeah, no, it was fascinating to have that access to what she knew, and then of course because she also had access, as did I, but she much closer to Bill, so the president. So it was fascinating.
Putin. And Putin, a ruthless tyrant, schooled in oppression. This man calculated everything with a coldness that would have given Siberia a chill.
It was so much fun writing that scene where he's sitting there, and I won't do it now because it's disgusting, but what men do with the man-spreading, sitting there, and it's clearly in that case, it's clearly a threatening, meant to be threatening. And we loved writing the Ellen character and the Betsy, because it's a love story of these two women, smart, strong women who are best friends. But how they use their wiles. They don't pull out guns and start shooting people. They don't, do somersaults in Lycra and, no car chases. They use their wiles and their wits and their smarts. And it was so much fun writing that and having that kind of tension in the stories.
And that insight. Would you do it again?
Well, they've asked us to do it again.
They must want another one.
They do, and we were actually talking about it last week about whether we will or not. We're enjoying this now, and it's a lot of work. That came out of the pandemic. We were able to do it in the pandemic because, both of us, we'd FaceTime at 7 p.m. when both of us were in bed. Flannel. I was in flannel. She was in something nicer. So we'd be on our laptops, tossing around ideas and talking about the pages and whatnot. But much more difficult to do it now because we're both incredibly busy. So I think we want to. I know we both want to, but just trying to find a time to do it where it will be fun rather than just a chore. Because we didn't have to do this. We did it because we thought it would be fun.
Now you're a TV series again. You tried it once, weren't happy.
Yeah.
Now again, Prime, Alfred Molina, great production company. But the quote that you used, which I found really interesting, was Jean Le Carré talking about his novels being turned into mini-series, saying it's like watching oxen being turned into bouillon, which is yuck. I mean, that's not a happy experience.
No.
You lose control.
You lose absolute control, and you see your creations that you care about being diminished and diminished and diminished. But what I finally came to was what Bouillon has and what they have is they've captured the essence. It may not be the same shape, may not be exactly the same structure, but it has the essence. And I came to a peace about that. I like what they've done. Not all of it. Some of it is disappointing. But Alfred Molina, I mean, honestly, he is superb. After watching all 8 episodes, and I watched it like this, right? And I just kept saying, don't F it up, don't F it up, don't F it up, please, dear God. And I wrote to him to thank him and to say something I didn't think he knew, but turns out he did, that Gamache is based on my husband. I didn't talk about what had happened to Michael. And that Michael's favorite phrase was surprised by joy. and that when I got to the end of the 8th episode, I was surprised by joy. Thank you for doing this for me and for Michael.
So there's still ideas? 18, 19, 20, 21?
Yes, I know. Do you know what? I think
Because you read and you observe and you take notes and you...
And I came out of 20 years at the CBC. I mean, don't we have like an endless supply of murderous thoughts after, after that? I do. Yeah. I did talk about writing being so isolated, and it is, because you spend 8 months of the year all alone writing, essentially alone. But at the same time, I've never been so aware of the world around me as I am when I'm writing, because I need that input. I need the turns of phrases, the sense of smell, the feel of the air,
food,
the
poetry,
the food, the poetry. That's right. No, all of those things. The conversation with friends and all that sensory input. Yeah, no, this could not have happened without being aware of the world around me, and also being aware of my interior world. And that's where, being a grateful alcoholic, I am aware of my flaws. I am aware of the terrible things I have done, the terrible things I fought, the forgiveness that people have shown me, and that therefore I need to forgive others, and how awful that is, and how awful it is to lug around resentments. And this book is a lot to do with what happens when you forgive and the magic of forgiveness, but what happens when you can't.
The royalties must be sweet. Louise, I'm thinking it's pretty great for you.
It is.
In the money department.
I'm not going to lie. It's well beyond anything I ever. I live in a little village in Quebec. My needs, honestly, I'm so grateful to have no money worries. Quite a lot of the income now goes to dementia support, and we're helping to build a wing on the local library that will be named after him.
I love that you say, like, no one saw this coming. It's a great story. Your mother, your teachers.
Oh my God, my mother. I think it's not a coincidence, frankly, Valerie, that I started writing after my mother passed away, because I was afraid of not getting her approval, not doing it well enough. And then once she passed away, I think I felt freer to take those risks.
What does being Canadian mean to you?
Oh, every day I am so proud. I'm proud, I am relieved, probably even more than proud, to be a Canadian. What a great country, isn't it? It has everything. It has democracy, it has freedom of speech, gun control. We have a social safety net that is, at times, of course, it's frayed. No place is perfect, and we have a lot to learn, a lot to make up for. I mean, we look at what's happening, with the Indigenous population, and how it's shameful, the things that we should have known and probably did know and chose not to act on, that we are now. But yeah, these are, as I said, these are love letters. No part of me, when they were saying nobody would read a crime novel set in Canada, thought, okay, I'm going to set it in Vermont. No, if you don't want it in Canada, screw you. It's going to be set in Canada, and whoever wants to read it is welcome to read it or not. And as it turns out, people are fascinated. People love to read about Canada. And I'm so grateful about that. I think the publishers clearly, not my publishers right now, of course, but they underestimate the readers. Readers are curious. I mean, you can't be a reader and not be curious. People, the whole literary tourism idea that I can read about Iceland or Nigeria and get a sense of what it's actually like without traveling there.
Well, your readers are sort of fanatics, I think.
And people are now coming certainly to
They're looking for
Quebec.
3 Pines.
They're looking for 3 Pines.
Can't find 3 Pines.
Yeah, and I tell them, they write and say, where is 3 Pines? Which is a reasonable question. And I say, well, it's sort of inspired by where I lived in the Eastern Townships, and it is. But it's not this isn't three. It doesn't actually exist in a physical sense. But what I tell them about is that Three Pines is a state of mind. It's just I live in Three Pines when I choose to be kind. How did kindness become a pejorative? How did being nice become an insult? No, we live in Three Pines when we see the flaws, but choose to also see the good things, to say something, to be supportive. And I don't always live in Three Pines, but the nice thing is wherever I am, I can be in Three Pines.
Well, bless you, Louise Penny.
Thank you, Valerie. I've loved this.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Canada Files.
The preceding program was made possible through the generous support of Charles and Marilyn Bailey, as well as the following donors: Ted and Alice Kernahan, the Browning Watt Foundation, Mary Davey, David and Cheryl Carr, Jim and Sandra Pitbledo, Tony and Sherry Fell, Bryce and Nikki Douglas, Richard Wernham and Julia West, Michael McCain and family, Richard Pilasoff, Clench House Foundation, Kathy and George Dombrowski, the 63 Foundation, and by the Central Canadian Public Television Association.